Yo, YouTube. Yeah, Zersky. It's your boy Hooligan, man. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, man. We're going to be reacting to building a high-end PlayStation 5, man. He claims it was hard. We're going to see how hard it is, man. One thing I do know what's hard is it's hard to get the PS5 in stock right now, man. So, yeah, man, we're going to be looking at how hard it is to build because it's hard to get right now. So, we're going to be looking at this, man. But before we do, make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that like, hit that subscribe.
There's no denying that the PlayStation 5's design is extremely striking. With its sweeping curves and iconic black and white colour palette, it's basically a modern sculpture and is undoubtedly going to go down as one of the most recognisable consoles ever. However, at the end of the day, it is, after all, just plastic and feels mass-produced, which isn't a surprise because it is. But this has got me thinking, what if it was made out of higher quality materials? What if it was made out of brass?
Brass?
This video is sponsored by KiwiCo. More about them later.
I know the PS5 is built out of something that's very hard to get because right now a lot of things are out of stock right now, including like graphic cards and a lot of other chips and cars and a bunch of stuff right now. So it's crazy. A lot of stuff is going on right now.
Brass is a centuries-old alloy of copper and zinc and has historically had a wide range of uses from intricate decorative pieces to durable mechanical components. What makes it so exciting to use for...
Yeah, that's what I thought it was good. I was hearing like some gold type of material. Like I was thinking gold. I heard the gold, like people were trying to say gold was in the PS5 before. So, yeah.
Homemade projects, however, is that it can be bent.
It would have been sick if it was gold though, for sure.
But soldered to and polished with relative ease, allowing for incredible results even using just basic tools, as I've discovered with some recent builds. Despite this workability, the PS5 is such an unusual shape that it's going to be a huge challenge to recreate its outer chassis with brass and still retain its sleek appearance. But if I get it right, it's going to look stunning.
If he does this,
the first
unbelievable.
step is to strip the PlayStation right down to its individual components. This is actually fairly straightforward, and as you can see, it's quite a remarkable device internally, especially with its unique looking heatsink. Continuing the strip down process allows me to remove this central glossy plastic mid-cover, which is the first part I'm going to recreate in brass. For this, I'm starting with some sheeting that's 1.5mm thick to match the original part. But predictably, marking its shape for cutting out is a bit tricky, as it's well curved, so can't be easily flattened out. The solution for this is to instead make a template using paper, as it can be bent to match the part's curvature. Once cut out, it can simply be stuck to the brass and a jigsaw used to trim it down to match.
That's crazy.
This leaves me with quite a nice shape, and I can now manually bend it to copy the original curves. This takes ages to do accurately, but it's worth it, as with a little time, patience and precision, it ends up being an almost exact replica.
That's
nice.
Crazy.
There are a few more jobs to tackle here though before it can be considered complete, the first of which is recreating the power button. This button actually triggers a little surface mount switch mounted to a PCB on the back, and as brass is fairly soft, using files is a great way to make a replacement for it. The hump in the middle allows it to press against the surface mount switch, while the little side wings prevent it from falling through a groove made for it in the new brass front.
Damn,
As the switch's
hard.
PCB needs to be held precisely in position for it to all work properly, I can simply solder some PCB pillar supports in place with a blowtorch. This is one of my favourite characteristics about brass, as when it reaches the right temperature, the solder just melts on contact and gets pulled in between each part by capillary action, resulting in a nice strong joint when cooled. Looking good.
Wow.
A similar process can be used for the front USB ports, and some additional mounting points will later allow it to be held securely to the console. Like everything, these need to be as accurate as possible for it to actually fit, but we'll have to wait until later to see whether it will or not. For now though, it's time to work on the trickiest part of this build, which is the side panels. I'm quite sceptical about being able to recreate these with brass, as they're such unusual shapes with opposing curve directions on each axis, so making this out of this is not going to be easy.
Shape's so weird.
Attempting to bend it by hand reveals another characteristic of brass that causes a few problems here, which is that, like many metals, it has a certain amount of elasticity. This basically means that it will spring back to its original shape unless it's forced past the point at which it yields and goes into plastic deformation. As you've perhaps predicted, this means that it's extremely difficult to put enough force into it to get it to bend at all. And despite trying for an hour or so, it just looks awful and nothing close to what I need. Thankfully though, there is a way out here. Take this small strip of brass as an example. You can see its elasticity as I push against it, and if I push hard enough it goes into plastic deformation. If I wanted to bend it to touch the vise, however, nothing I do will make it stay flush, as its elasticity prevents it from fully yielding. However, things get interesting if I hold it in this position and then add some heat. Once cool again, it actually stays in this shape because the heat has relaxed the internal stresses in the brass in a process known as normalizing, and I can take advantage of this by devising an alternative construction method for the new side panels. For this, I'm going to make a template of the original panels by tracing each outer edge onto some strips of wood and then cut them carefully out using the lines as a guide. After sticking them to a sheet of MDF, you can hopefully see where this is going, as the wood perfectly matches the original panel's outer shape. With the original panel removed, my brass sheeting is going to be pushed against this wooden framework using the other side of the cuts to help it form the curves properly. And as I'm going to be using a lot of heat in just a minute, I've wrapped each one in foil to help avoid charring. With the help of clamps, these pieces really do force the brass into shape, and it's looking quite...
This much work just to make a PS5, bro. Out of brass. This is crazy.
promising. But for reasons I explained earlier, if I were to undo the clamps now without any extra steps, it would just return to being a perfectly flat piece of brass, as it hasn't been pushed past any yielding point. And this is where the heating process comes into play. Out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to do this outside, as heating brass up a lot can produce nasty vapours. It's unlikely that I'll hit anywhere near temperatures that will result in this, but it's better safe than sorry, especially as it's such a nice day outside. Taking a close look at the brass as I heat it, we can see that it's actually changing in shape as parts of it increase in temperature, and it's certainly looking less solid. There is a strange discoloration patch in the middle though, which also seems to be disformed. With it now cooled, we can take a look at it, and there's some good news and some bad news here. The good news is that once the clamps are released, the metal stays in its newly curved form, which is the exact result I was hoping for after the heating process. However, taking a quick look underneath, we can see that the internal side of it has bent inwards substantially, causing it to touch the MDF and char it, which is what caused the ugly patch. This means that while the outer curves are absolutely on point and match the original panels closely, the inside is warped far enough inwards to prevent the panel from sitting properly against the side of the PlayStation.
Oh shit.
So it's time for some modifications, and this time I've thickened the base MDF to make it even stiffer and covered the inside mounting pegs of the panel with blue tack. This is because I'm going to make a plaster mould with it to perfectly copy its shape on the inside of my frame, and having the blue tack there allows it to release easily once the plaster's set. Having not worked with plaster of Paris before though, I foolishly didn't think to read the instructions about it and, well, basically wasted it all as it set before I could get it into the chamber. Oh dear. Second time round though, I've mixed it properly, allowing it to simply be poured into the mould. At this point, however, another disaster strikes as it's unfortunately started spewing out of the bottom as its weight is too much for the seal. This is definitely the messiest day I've had for a while, and it just goes to show that not everything goes to plan at DIY Perks HQ. Anyway, after doing it in batched layers to reduce the chances of leakage, it appears to have worked, as despite the setbacks, the plaster has set perfectly around the inside of each panel. And after filling the blue tack holes and sanding them flush, it's time to try them out. The brass sheet again, as expected, nicely follows the curvature of the frame, only this time its central section is much closer to how it needs to be. Moving the torch around a lot should heat the whole thing up more evenly than last time, avoiding hot spots. And with that, it's the moment of truth. You know, I think it's just about worked. Comparing it directly to the original side panel, we can see that its curvature is only a millimetre or so off perfection, which I'd say is pretty good going, and it's possible to improve things even further by trimming down the excess on the sides and curving the corners with a file. Absolutely brilliant. The success of these side panels means that the project has a chance at working, so I'm very happy that they've come out this well, especially after all the disasters.
Well, that one
As you
did.
can see though, they are rather messy looking and definitely need some cleanup and polishing work before they really start to look good. But before I get on with that and then put everything together to see just how good it really looks, it's time for a quick ad from this video's sponsor, KiwiCo. KiwiCo is a super cool company content to make world-changing ideas, example of things that you time-consuming, but it's totally going to be worth it. The first step is to use some wet and smooth, after which it can be followed up with some metal polish. This really takes it into another league entirely, and the shine polished brass has is just sublime.
Crazy.
To finish this part off, all it needs now is its new power switch mounting in place, followed by the acrylic side wings from the original. These side wings work in tandem with an LED board to make a really nice gentle glowing effect, which should look quite interesting reflected in the brass. So with that, it's time to see whether it can actually fit onto the PlayStation. While it is a little stiff, everything does clip back together nicely, and after screwing it all
That
down,
should look
we
crazy.
can catch an impression of the final aesthetic.
That's
And
hard.
oh boy, I'm pretty excited having seen this. At this point, the side panels too can be finished using the wet and dry method, though before doing the final pass with polish, I need to devise some kind of mounting method for them. You see, the original panels use individual pegs that clip them in place, but as mine are blank at the moment, there's nothing to stop them from falling away. So to recreate these pegs, I got a few more brass pillar supports and trimmed them down at an angle. This allows me to set them against the inside of the panels, using the original shell as a template. As they have a hole down the middle of each one, it allows me to stick some solder down them and very carefully and briefly heat them up from underneath, which melts the solder and strongly welds them in place. As you can see, I've gone with different lengths on each one to match the peg lengths, and I have soldered a little disc in the top corner which acts like a clip, just like on the originals. This leaves me with one last thing to do, which is to finally polish up these side panels, after which they can be clipped in place. Are you ready for this?
Make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button, man. I think this kid going hard. Woo. Wow, that looks crazy, bro.
The warm, reflective nature of the brass, combined with the delicate curves of the original design, refine the aesthetic far beyond what I could have hoped for,
Way better.
resulting in what is perhaps one of the most stunning consoles in the world.
Damn. That should look hard right there, man. That look hard. I don't think there's really anything else to watch. Like, he just gonna talk about it.
And certainly more eye-catching, and a couple of things to note here is that compared with the original, the look really is quite striking, and certainly more eye-catching, and makes a nice companion to the brass monitor that I made in my last video.
That's it for today, man. That shit looking hard, man. Make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button. More videos will be coming soon. More reactions and all that. We going crazy. Let's get lit. What up?